Hello, welcome everybody to the Resonance Science Foundation faculty Q&A. We have Dr. Inez Ordinata with us, Marshall Lefferts, um, and
William Brown.
I'm
of
William
course.
Brown.
And we may be able to get Adam Apollo on. Just have to sort out a little technical thing on getting him a link. So hopefully that will happen soon. William, are we on Facebook too? Did you get that going? Yes, I see it. I see it now.
Yeah, we're live on Facebook now.
Great. Well, welcome everybody on Facebook as well. William, if you want to go ahead and see if you can get a link to Adam.
Okay.
We'll see if we can get that happening. Welcome everybody coming on to Zoom from Florida, from Virginia. If you're just coming on to Zoom, why don't you go ahead and say hi and make sure your chat is set to everyone rather than hosts and panelists. Like Terry, I just saw that yours is set to host and panelists. So please go ahead and change your chat settings so that it's set to everyone. Say hi and let us know where you were coming in from. And I'm going to say hi from Asheville. I just got into Asheville from a road trip across the country. Was traveling for actually a few months and had a really wonderful journey with my partner Razan, and we went across we basically kind of left winter here in Asheville, and we're blessed to have some amazing places to stay and people to visit with and see, and it was a beautiful journey, and we just got back. Here in Asheville, springtime is full on, so it feels really good. It's such a beautiful part of the world. So if you're in Asheville, I maybe get to see some of you sometime soon. Would love to do that.
Marshall, is that your place? Your settled?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, back home, so to speak. At least until winter comes again, then we'll see where we end up.
Okay, I see. Oh, here's very hot in Mexico City. Very hot.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, we had.
I know. We were just down in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico.
And you were in California.
It was getting hot in California too, and it was getting quite hot. So what's happening with you, Ines? How are you doing?
Fine, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. Really happy. With the work going on here at RSF, and we have we're starting discussions about a consciousness paper that we will have to complete, but just starting with William and Nassim Olivier. So we'll probably having that going. I'm also getting more implicated in the biophysics paper as well. Also having a paper which is coming, I'm resending a paper now at this week about the electron Cedar B vegan. So that's also happening this week.
What's that one about? What was it about?
Cedar B vegan, it's a German word for the electron, right. And it means trembling along the way, electron motion. Well, it's a motion for every particle, not just the electron. It's just that the thing is that Dirac's equation, these relativistic equations for particles, they predict this oscillation at the speed of light in particles. And when that happened, like Schrödinger and another researcher had already seen that as well. And they figured out, okay, but this oscillation is happening at the speed of light, but these are massive particles. So what's going on here? You know, you cannot have that oscillation at the speed of light if you're a particle. That's defying that was defying relativity. And so what's happening, what's going on? So the interpretation that's given now in mainstream is that it's not really a real oscillation, because when they found out this oscillation, they said, perfect, we have the oscillation that would explain spin, angular momentum, and so that would be a real oscillation of the electron. But so it's, but then since it's happening at the speed of light, that was like not contradicting relativity, so this is not possible. So then let's say that the agreement was that this was not a real oscillation of the electrons, this was a fluctuation of the Dirac sea that was happening at the speed of light. So that's where the idea comes from, particles and antiparticles popping in and out of existence from the Dirac sea. It's at the speed of light. So that's basically, so that's why you're not violating, let's say, when you create these virtual particles, you're not violating because it's happening so fast and they're not really, really real particles, but just fluctuation of the field. So this is like fluctuations of the Dirac sea, that's how they call it. But of course, we know because of the holographic solution that this Sitter-Wigwigen, this fluctuation is in fact, it's a real oscillation of the electron and the mass. And in fact, in one of the models that this review is exploring, all the models that are trying to explain Sitter-Wigwigen as a real phenomena, as a real movement of the electron, of the field, let's say, of the electron. And so, and of course, this ties up very well with vacuum fluctuations, which is where that should be happening, or where that is coming from mainly. And so then, and in these classical perspectives that I had been collecting in this review, what I found was that that in fact, yeah, this oscillation would, so the mass would be in Einstein's equation, E equal mc squared. This m that's happening over there is happening because of an internal vibration, and this internal vibration is giving that mass. So what you call mass is happening like an outer reference frame from that oscillation, and that is perfectly compatible with the holographic solution, with Nassim's model, and what's coming up in the next article as well, because Sitter-Wigwigen is one of the effects that comes from precisely the vacuum fluctuations, or the organization of the vacuum fluctuations. So so that's pretty interesting, and so that ties pretty well with the and it's a review. It's 60 pages long. It's took me a couple of years to complete, because there's also models coming forward which were not included before, so I have to go back and revise. At this moment, there's a new model from Alexander Burinsky. He's a physicist that he said that spin can also deform space-time. So if you don't consider spin, then you're neglecting most of the, which is something that we have also said. So
for a long time.
So he's saying that this spin is like a black hole. So it creates an effect like a black hole. So so this person just published like a couple of months ago another article, so I had to go ahead and review it and then include it in this review, because it was very important results that he was presenting. So this is something that I really have to let go like now, because if not, I will never finish.
Oh yeah, that would be good to get it out.
Yeah, I have to get it out. So yeah.
Great. Great.
Yeah, and that's also happening, and having discussions with people from institutes that work in neurosciences, one in Alicante and also in Mexico City. I was invited to give like a talk about the holographic solution, how would that go into the work of neuroscience and all of that. So yeah, very moving, very, very, very interesting moment. So I'm happy for that.
Excellent. Great to hear, Ines. Sounds like some good things coming soon.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. How about you, William?
Yeah, so we've had a interesting couple of months on new discoveries that have been coming out in the field of biophysics and molecular genetics. And it's just been very interesting because a number of predictions that we made in our publications. Our publication, the Unified Space Memory Network, covering the unified science from cosmogenesis to consciousness, and in my paper, Unified Physics and the Entanglement Nexus of Awareness, we made predictions concerning some of the quantum mechanical mechanisms, I guess you could call it, involved with gene memory and genetic adaptations. Um, and, I say you could call it quantum mechanics because, it's involving the behavior of atoms and molecules in the cell. So, at that very small level in the quantum domain. So our predictions concerned ways in which the biological system, the living organism, can exchange information with the environment and with the information structure of space-time itself. So what we call the space memory network. And via that information exchange, can have intentional or purposeful adaptations. So adaptations that are going to be beneficial given it's the environment the organism is in, so that the changes in the DNA are not just random. They're not just occurring via what you would call a purely Darwinian mechanism. There is actually an information exchange occurring. Now, we explained how that would occur, a mechanism by which that would occur in those papers. And as it turns out, these have been confirmed, or at least are finding strong support within the larger scientific investigation of these potential mechanisms. So one of them was the prediction of non-random adaptations, non-random changes occurring in the DNA, in the genome. And we explained how the information exchange can be occurring with the Unified Space Memory Network to have changes occurring in the DNA that are not going to be purely random. And there was a study performed on a large sample of human populations that found non-random changes occurring in the production of a beneficial gene adaptation. So this gene, this change in the DNA was occurring with a non-random frequency. So in regions where this genetic modification, this gene change would be beneficial, it was occurring with a very high frequency. And in areas where the change would be neutral or have no benefit, there was a very low level of this gene change. So there's very strong evidence of directed evolution where the changes are not occurring purely randomly, at least in some instances, possibly in most instances, the changes are seemingly being informed by the organism, the environment, on what will be the best adaptive strategy to have the change proceed. Then recently, and I know Inez, you wrote an article on this, which was just fantastic, explaining some quantum physics research that has been done on what's called proton tunneling occurring in the DNA. And this was an exact thing that I had discussed in my paper, the Unified Space the Entanglement Nexus of Awareness. And so this is one of those mechanisms by which the information exchange can be occurring. So the information exchange between the organism, the environment, and the space memory network. And what it entails is that the DNA, it's held together via hydrogen bonds. That's what determines the very specific Watson-Crick base pairing rules between the DNA. And that's therefore what determines the genetic code. Because A and T is always going to base pair via hydrogen bonds, and G and C is always going to base pair via this very specific hydrogen bonding pattern they share between them. One of the things that this study found is that those protons can actually jump positions. And when they do that, it's going to change the base pairing rules. So you can get these changes in the DNA via a quantum mechanical process, a quantum tunneling process. And so it's another validation or strong support for the model that we've explained and predictions that we've made. So, in terms of working at the theoretical level, those experimental validations are some of the best news you can receive. And we've been getting a lot of those coming in recently. So it's encouraging, to say the least. Yeah.
This is all very encouraging because, biology so the area of quantum biology is like having so much momentum at this moment because of these findings, because this, like, for instance, the tunneling effect is a physical effect that is supposed to happen in very strict circumstances. It's a very low distance like process. You cannot have more than one atom, let's say, in order to have this once one atom apart, and then the tunneling is over. So when you have this tunneling happening at very long distances, and even like explaining mutations in DNA, then something quantum is happening at the level of biology. And it's very, very important, because then one would ask ourselves, what is the mechanism that is allowing for certain quantum mechanical processes to survive in time regimes and distance regimes and temperature regimes where it's supposed to not be anymore? Because quantum is supposed to have this like a behavior in which it's only happening in very cold, it's very sensible to temperature, to pressure, to decoherence. Any of that could create decoherence, and then the decoherence breaks the quantum state. It just that's one of the main problems on quantum physics and on quantum computing as well. This is why quantum computers are so difficult to achieve, because the quantum state is extremely fragile. But then you have that suddenly at room temperature, at body temperature, with conditions, a lot of noise, background noise, huge background noise. Imagine this happening in the inside of a cell. So it's complete noise everywhere, and yet you have coherent behaviors that can survive so long distances and for so long times as well. There was also this they found that there was, I think it was in the microtubules, I'm not sure, where there was this emission of light, and they found fluorescence. Finding fluorescence in a that fluorescence is a quantum mechanical process. It's completely quantum mechanical. So if you have a biological system which is at the scale of the microtubules, was that right? Yeah. Giving fluorescence, then I was like, whoa, what's that about? So all this confirms that that biology is quantum in origin, and that some mechanisms. So it would be interesting to understand what mechanisms allow this quantumness to prevail even in regimes where it's supposed to be no longer present.
That was a really interesting one. I'm glad you brought that up, because it was a Jack Trzynski. And he had actually done a lot of work with Stuart Hameroff on quantum mechanical, non-trivial quantum mechanical phenomena occurring in the microtubules. And yeah, he saw that when they shown this very specific frequency of laser light on the microtubules, that there was a delayed luminescence. And what's really exciting about that is that delay is on what's called physiological relevant timescales. So like 100 milliseconds, let's say. Well, 100 milliseconds is about the time, 100 to 300 milliseconds is about the time that neurons send electrochemical signals to each other. So, it's showing that whatever processing, let's say information processing that is occurring is in sync with the activity of like neuronal signal transmission. And so, they're shining this light on and there's a delayed response. So it's like the light is being absorbed. It's doing some kind of processing. I can imagine like the electron dipoles and the microtubules are entering a coherent oscillation via the specific laser frequency, and then re-emitting the light after this coherent phase has been achieved. So yeah, that was a really interesting study.
And then that was serving as well for the consciousness studies, because then they said, okay, let's see what happens if we put some anesthetics on it.
Yeah.
And if the anesthetics change this pattern, then this is definitely something that plays a role in consciousness. And that's what they found. They found that effectively when they used, and Hammerf, I think it was implied in that part of the study, he's an anesthesiologist, and then they applied an anesthetics. They found there was a change in the pattern. It delayed even more. I think it delayed 4 or 5 times more. And then that's connecting with the issue, because anesthetics turn off and on consciousness, let's say, or some level of consciousness. So they figured that out, and so now they want to have different kind of anesthetics and see if this is general for every type of anesthetics and how that would go for every type. So it's a very important like confirmation, let's say, validation that consciousness is coming from a quantum realm, from a quantum regime. So that's also very important, because and that also plays a role into discussing where is consciousness really in. Is it in the brain? Is it in? So that's all playing, going into a very, very interesting field of research. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, really fantastic to hear. There's this validation coming in all these fronts out there for the foundational aspects of the theory in general, unified physics theory, and some of the specific applications of it, to really indicate that, certainly, I think everyone here agrees there's a coherent logic to it that holds up, in its logical framework that we continue to work with, because it's like, yes, that makes sense. It would work that way. And then to start to see some external, like you said, William, support for the validity of that, and in some cases some more direct validation of what has been predicted or proposed, is really remarkable and really exciting to hear. This is probably the most leading edge of physics and science and biology, and the whole fundamental underlying nature of reality and consciousness, and who are we and how does this work, and how are we interacting with our environment in this hologram of experience that is universally connected, and to actually start to see those mechanisms being explored and experimentally presented is really amazing. So thank you guys for sharing that. It's always such a fascinating insight for us to hear about what you guys are, what's actually being pursued and discovered, and what's coming in from the outside to corroborate or sounds like mostly corroborating rather than challenging it so much, which is pretty cool too. So yeah, that's great. All right, well, we have a bunch of questions, and I wanted to say for people, how many people do we have here today? We have 82, great. If anybody is new and is first time coming into our Q&A, this is a chance for you guys to be able to post questions, and there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Of course, a number of you have already. And so we'll look at those questions and hop around and see which ones we can get to. Sometimes we can get to all of them. There's not too many right now. And we also like to be able to invite you to come on screen with us when we cover your question. And if you'd like to do that, when I think actually maybe, William, you need to make me a host or co-host if you can, so I can do that. And I invite you on to this to be a presenter. And if you'd like to do that, you can open up your camera and your microphone. And if you prefer not to, or if you're in a place where it's not convenient to do so, then just you can deny the invitation to come on. That's all fine, either way. And I see some of you are still posting in the chat where it's set to hosts and panelists only. So I'm just going to remind you one more time, if you're posting in the chat, make sure you have it set to everyone so everybody can see your comments in the chat. And yeah, we'll go probably for another hour today. And I guess, William, were we not able to invite Adam? Did we not?
An invitation was sent.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll see if he can jump on to join us.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Mm.
Well, did either of you find a question you want to begin with? Most of these, I think, are kind of in your fields of knowledge more than mine.
You know, this one at the top from Jeff Colebrook, kind of, it's a good continuation of even what we were just talking about with some of these non-trivial quantum mechanical information processing dynamics occurring in the biological system. It might be a good one to just keep that conversation going a little bit more in depth.
Great.
Okay. So Jeff is asking about the work by Dr. Monica Gagliano regarding plant memory and plant cognition. So Monica Gagliano used these mimosa plants, which are very interesting because they have a tactile response mechanism. So they have little hairs that come off of the leaves. And when those hairs sense a mechanical movement, so like something brushing up against them or even pressing down on the leaves, which are in an open position, will close in response to that. So it's ostensibly to protect the leaves so that they're not damaged if there's like an animal trotting through a field of mimosa plants or something of that nature, or even a insect trying to eat the leaves, will close to protect themselves. And so Dr. Monica Gagliano, she did these very systematic controlled experiments where she was testing the response time of this mechanical response of the plants. And she found that she could actually train the plants to respond to a stimulus, to remember the stimulus. You know, as this stimulus was introduced, it caused them to close their leaves. Actually, I think it was a pretty significant stimulus. She would drop the plants, you know, probably not a great distance, but enough that when they got that jolt, they'd close their leaves. And what she documented via these very systematic controlled tests was that the plants would seem to remember this stimulus, and they would respond differently over successive patterns of stimulation depending on the particular pattern.
Yeah, when they found they weren't going to get hurt, when they found it was safe, yeah, it was just a threat and not following through, they changed their behavior. I thought that was fascinating.
So that's, you know, indicative of like some kind of memory mechanism, even a cognitive capacity, because it's like at some level, the signal is being processed, the information is being processed, that we're expending a lot of energy to close our leaves, and we're also getting them out of the light that is driving photosynthesis unnecessarily, let's stop doing that. Yeah. So it's just, her studies were experiments that and the results that she got were not what is supposed to be seen. Not within the conventional thinking of intelligence and even cognitive processes or capabilities of animals, much less plants, which are not supposed to have any such intelligent activity or cognitive or memory capacity.
Memory, yeah, memory.
Yeah. So it is, and because of that, because it just is counter to the presuppositions of the scientists, right? The assumptions, because it's counter to that, it is controversial studies. But because Monica is brilliant, for one thing, and we've worked with Dr. Gagliano, and she is exceptional at setting up experiments. She's got this mind that can set up experiments exceptionally well, and because of that, the conventional scientific community might not like the results, but the experiments are airtight. So it's like, you might not like the results, but that's what they are, and it's not like some kind of experiment that was done haphazardly, or some mistake that you can find in the testing to counter it. And it just speaks to that assumption, and the assumption within the conventional scientific community regarding the intelligent capabilities of living organisms is that intelligence is a function of neuronal computational activity. So in order for an organism to have memory and cognitive capabilities, they must have a developed, even a highly developed central nervous system that contains highly specialized cells, neuronal cells, that are going to form the synaptic connections and have the electrical communication that is going to be the physical correlate of memory and intelligence. And first and foremost, what this study is showing is just that assumption and that of that neurocomputational model, and the model itself is wrong. It's erroneous. And so, there's other experiments that can show this, can demonstrate this, like the maze finding behavior of slime molds. So that's interesting. When I talk about that in the big questions course that I have, the elective course that I have.
That little seminar they had that one too. They had all the ones about consciousness without a brain. So that's a good little link. They had the slime mold guy there too.
Yeah, and so actually, I probably shouldn't even go over all the examples. It's just to say that there's been a lot of demonstrations of cognitive or even intelligent behavior in organisms that don't have a highly developed central nervous system. They don't have a brain. Some of them don't have neurons. Some of them are single-celled organisms. And so the point of it, in plants as well, the point of it is just that the information processing and the intelligent behavior of the organism is occurring at the molecular level. I mean, that's what this is showing. So sure, plants don't have neurons.
You made me think about this mechanism where in our leukocytos, when when in our cells they're fighting, they're chasing the bad guys.
Yeah.
So where is that chasing coming from? Our black, I don't know, white cells, I think they call
Leukocytes, yeah.
the
white cells.
leukocytes. So they go chasing. So that's not something that's happening on, at the level of the, I mean, they must have a brain on their own. They must have some kind of cognitive information processing, so that they know that they have to chase that guy. And it's incredible. It's like it's just so impressive, of the videos, how they're chasing the bacteria or whatever. It's just so funny to see.
It's not unlike a fox chasing a rabbit. I mean.
Yes, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
How that's amazing.
Yeah.
So William,
Yeah.
In this study with the mimosas, then, and the mimosa plants basically learning when it's not an actual threat and having a memory associated with that process. Is there a way you would describe the mechanism of that memory storage, that memory capacity?
Yeah. So it really comes down to looking at the information processing capabilities of the single cell. And really, one of the things that I'm doing in my work and the biophysics work with Nassim and Inez and all our researchers here at the RSF is to explain and demonstrate how the seat of intelligent capabilities of the living system is at the molecular level within the single cell. Actually, I mean, it really just at the molecular level, because you can actually show evolutionary dynamics, adaptive behavior, responses to environmental conditions, all these kind of things that would be characterized under that property of intelligence in just single molecular species, the RNA molecule. If you have a network of RNA molecules, you can even begin to see intelligent behavior in this single molecular system. And that's getting down to the root of the information processing, the root of the intelligence in the biological system. It's in the RNA molecules, and hence by extension, DNA in the genome. But actually the most dynamic of that is the RNA molecules. In terms of their capabilities for information processing, they are extremely dynamic and actually have a high capacity to take in information from the environment, have the kind of permutations that is going to reflect that information, i.e. memory, and execute responses. So the RNA, then in larger, so in that sense, you're going to see intelligent type behavior in viruses, in bacteria, via the information processing capabilities of the RNA itself. And then, so one of the ways to begin to explain this, and perhaps so that the larger scientific community can begin to understand how it is that something as simple as, to them, something as simple as an RNA molecule can process vast amounts of information and have this memory properties, is things like that non-trivial quantum mechanical phenomenon that we were discussing with like proton tunneling. So, the RNA molecules can undergo these quantum mechanical states in which information is being coupled with the space memory network, that is what is directing things like these proton shifts, where nucleotides can be rapidly changed in response to that information exchange. So quantum mechanical information processing occurring in RNA molecules. So, like in the plants, bacteria, single-celled organisms, I really can't stress enough how dynamic the RNA activity is, and actually the wide range of different pathways, signaling pathways, protein production pathways, DNA modulatory pathways that are being controlled and regulated by these RNA molecules that have just a really high turnover rate in terms of being produced and interacting and with other molecules and modulating all of that response. And so, that's probably really a key one of the molecular system to highlight, just because that also allows us to go all the way back to that transition phase where the universe was developing along, and the black holes, stars were churning out heavy elements. The universe was starting to get carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and all these elements involved in the precursors to organic molecules, how that all started to come together to form an intelligent state of matter. A state of matter that encodes information with a syntax, with a grammar, which forms, a memory system, a system for processing information to evoke adaptive responses. That state of matter would later become what we call the living system. So if you look at that transition state, one of the central players is RNA. Now, not on its own. So, it's also interfacing with like membrane structures, which are lipids, proteins, amino acids, these kind of things. But you can pin the origin of intelligence and memory capabilities of the organism and the living system in that molecule, RNA. And since every living thing on Earth, even things that are considered maybe not living like viruses, since every living thing has RNA, every living thing has, what I'm trying to explain and demonstrate, every living thing has memory capabilities, intelligence, and even what you would call intentional, volitional behavior because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that giving that concept of this all pervasive intelligence underlying that, of course, we're working with using this new paradigm understanding for like all new ways of healing, shifting, energy with like, Joe Dispenza's work, Lynn McTaggart's work, and actually using this intelligent energy to learn and to shift for purposes of healing and instantaneously, or, not totally changing it, which I think is fascinating, because that just all this, what you're saying, supports all this other, supports all this. And it's just fascinating to me. And, that we're able to take this wisdom and use it for our benefit.
Because even at kind of a simple level, you can see that, okay, my body, my cells have intelligence.
And we can talk to them, we can influence intelligence in ourselves, and they can, and changing the DNA. It's just, and I think that's, that's happening we're learning it scientifically now, that maybe before it was placebo or even faith healing, but now we're learning the science underlying the shifting, a changing of how we can actually influence in our biology.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow. It's fun. So yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Jeff.
Yeah, well, I always love seeing you guys. You're wonderful, and
Good to see you
so
too.
grateful to be part of this little group. And yeah, we'll see you later. Blessings to all of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Oh, there he goes. Great. Ines, do you want to
Yeah,
pick up
we
on a
have
question?
a question, like the most voted was Julie's Heyman. And she's asking about the paper.
Yeah, of course.
The question. So may we ask about the status of the big paper that Nassim and collaborators have been working on? Sure, you can ask.
Yes,
I don't know if
we
you can respond
can.
now.
Have you, and if you want to experience Ines dancing, now we're going to see her dance.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, it's always advancing in the sense that we're getting closer to the to being released. That's the good news about it. And that at some point, I'm from my last, like, say, feedback, it would be, well, we are almost entering summer, so more like into the fall, like, let's say into the fall, let's say September, October was the date what that had been like pre-established again, no, like saying, okay, we hope we'll have it for that this time. And that's as much as I can tell about the date, because it changed, and it changes all, not the date, I mean the content of the article of the paper is changing like time, because it is evolving very fast. I mean, it evolves very fast, and so many elements, new elements coming to play, and they're incorporated, and so it's just to the point in which then it's decided, okay, up to here we can go, and we can go out, let's say up to here. But it's like with the cedar wing, I could keep, like, adding and putting things that at some point you just say, okay, this is the point in which we decide that that's the moment we have to release it. It's up to here. So that up to here moment, we're expecting for it to happen in September, October. That's when because of the calculations of the time that it has taken to go this far, and how much they want to go further, like how much deeper inside we have to go, that would be the time. So yeah, subject to maybe a little delay, but yeah, but that's like the time scale that I have at least in my information. That's what I have. So yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, everybody has been anticipating it for a while, and of course, it has to be done when it's done, not any moment sooner than that, for very important reasons. So
that's right. Yeah, we're all like salivating with it, like we want to see it, please. So,
yeah.
It's growing the momentum and expectation, and that's how it goes. But it's worth it. That what I can say, it's worth the wait. It's just impressive, incredible. We already had a taste of what it was going to be, in Mexico and in the Tulum retreat, when he showed what it was possible for him to show at the time for Nassim, and so he and already that was like mind blowing. It was like, geez, everything you could even see, like I just could say, like how the golden ratio, the original, let's say, fee, which is, as you know, the golden ratio, how it emerged naturally from the model. It's just like incredible. Just by seeing that, cool. It's like, wow. And it's so physical, and it's so clear and so real. It's like, so it's just it's incredible. It's beautiful. And so, and that as well. And there's so many things. And that was on January, that was February, and it's been much more now. It's going much more now down the road and down the rabbit hole. So it's like, whoa. Wow. I mean, you write all of physics, so it's just like to say, okay, up to here, we're safe to go. And that's, yeah, that's the time.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Thank you for that update.
Oh, you're welcome.
We will be patient,
Yes.
excitedly patient.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's see, where should we go from here? Did you see another one, Ines, that you were?
There's then Ken Sonoma, that's the
Mhm.
next question, and he's asking about DNA as well.
Okay.
Experiment. Okay, so have there been any experiments done for correcting and or enhancing DNA after it has been intentionally damaged? And if so, to what is that DNA being corrected to, or is it just about regaining its internal harmonic balance? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So I don't know if we want to bring him up.
I've just extended the invitation for that.
Okay.
Hey guys,
Hey.
how are
Hey there,
y'all?
Ken, welcome. Good.
Oh, good
How
to
are
be
you?
here. Should have put on my clean shirt, then I'd be really impressing you all.
We all have our little hidden secrets on Zoom.
Oh yeah, well, not too many here. But no,
Where
I mean,
are you?
Sonoma County, California.
Of Sonoma
So
County, of course, says right
San
there.
Francisco.
Yeah,
As a
yeah.
as a matter of fact, I was probably one of the first people that was seeing the sim when he first came out in the public at, where the heck was it? It was like the Redwood City Women's Club when he would come on up out of
Mm.
Santa Cruz and do his presentations, and I got all of his books and stuff, and
Oh, great.
I was hooked from that point on. So I said, okay, I surrender.
Excellent, excellent.
Wow. Yeah.
So basically, my question is that, you know, everything you guys are talking about is that DNA and everything going on within the cell in life is a harmonic system. And I've been listening to and studying a little bit about Edward Grant. He's got his all his harmonic frequencies and everything. And so coherence is the thing that life and, I'll say, molecular biology or water-based systems like to cohere to. And so the question I'm looking at it is, if you take DNA and you shred it, and how does it reorganize? And what does it reorganize to? And does it reorganize as it was, or will it then take an evolutionary step to, let's say, prevent some level of further disorganization to happen? So do we see continual kind of recursive levels of intelligence on that level? And if so, if there is a recursive level of intelligence, what drives it? So what can we do to enhance it? So at what point does our evolutionary desire and intention become self-fulfilling on a molecular scale?
You know,
Answer that in 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds. Let's go. You know, it is actually one of the testaments to the intelligence intrinsic or inherent to the system of molecular biology at the molecular level, where DNA has this amazing proofreading, editing, and correction system established. You know, it's like, to me, it's just another example, or even a prime example of the intelligence intrinsic to the system at the molecular level. You know, so even the DNA polymerase enzyme, so that's a large, what's called multimeric, multi-subunit protein that binds to the DNA, reads the base pair code, the nucleotide code, and synthesizes a new strand based on that template. And so when it's doing that, it'll synthesize or polymerize, put together these nucleotides. So it's free-floating nucleotides, adenosine, guanosine, cytosine, thymine. It'll put those together in this polymer, this strand, at about 1,000 nucleotides a second. So I mean, you can imagine this protein just racing along the DNA. And, you know, with 3 billion base pairs, that means that at 1,000 nucleotides a second, that means it takes like a day or two. I can't remember the exact number right now, but I mean, it takes like a day or two to replicate the human genome at 1,000 base pairs a second because it's 3 billion units long. But one of the things that it has while it's doing that 1,000 nucleotides a second is a proofreading mechanism. So it can actually tell when it's incorporated the wrong nucleotide. So, you know, if you've got on the template strand an A and adenosine, you need a thymine to go there, or else it's going to be a mutation. So if it puts a guanosine in there, it actually has a mechanism where it will recognize that, kick it out, and get the right nucleotide in. Now, how all these dynamics are occurring is actually, I think, extremely interesting, because I mean, it's involving electromagnetic resonance for the correct input of the nucleotide with its matching base pair. Also a electron current exchange, so that it can identify when an incorrect nucleotide has been inserted. So, you know, there's all kinds of these proofreading and editing mechanisms, even in DNA that is in like a mature cell that isn't replicating, let's say. And this becomes very important when you're thinking about aging, cancer, certain disease states. So even in a mature cell, a somatic cell, where the DNA isn't replicating, you have genetic surveillance machinery. So these proteins, highly specialized proteins that are going along and looking for damaged portions of the DNA. And indeed, there have been many experiments performed where the DNA is intentionally damaged. And then you find what is the protein that comes in and fixes that damage, because there are proteins that do that. And there's been some good progress made, even in the last year, on identifying novel DNA repair proteins, enzymes. And anytime these are found, it's actually very exciting, and it gets a lot of publicity within the molecular genetics community, because that's a potential protein that can stop and potentially reverse aging.
So the question I have is that I recognize that all these proteins and all these structures are what is revealing the order. But my guess is, you know, we're kind of the harmonic, you know, kind of brain trust here, that there's an order beneath that. And the way I'm envisioning it is that wherever you want to say that it originates, there's some sort of symphony, there's some sort of musical substrate or vibrational substrate, which then gets transmitted into the water, which changes the water into kind of a plasma. And then that plasma has intelligence that goes into the polymerase and all these various things. So it's a cascade, it's vibrational cascade. And so when we take two people or two living systems, we say one system is prone to disease, they're prone to DNA degradation, the other one is somehow resistant to that. What is the fundamental thing that allows that resistance to exist? Now, I would guess, and this is just my theory of Ken, and we can test that somewhere down the road, it has something to do with charge. So the more voltage potential or proton potential, however we want to define that potential, that exists within one system, it's going to have the ability to hold and retain a higher level of vibrational or harmonic structure than a lower system. And so for me, that's like a no-brainer. And if there's evidence to that, then they're also, you know, if we want to go down to the Planck and say, well, everything's vibrating at 10 to the 44th, that's a really high frequency to generate. There's got to be ways that can be duplicated So again, you can get kind of a comprehensive across the board vibration of health and also vibration to eliminate or resolve the chaos. Is that kind of vibing on the right sense?
Yeah, well, I would say that what you're thinking regarding the water, the current, that those are things that have been observed. So I mean, you're absolutely on the right track with that. You know, so it, water is known. It's in the textbooks. The role of water, molecular biology, molecular genetics textbooks. It's known the role that water plays in transmitting the information that's contained in the DNA. You know, so like those DNA repair enzymes, those proteins, when they're doing their genetic surveillance of the DNA, so the genetic surveillance apparatus of the genome, what they're actually reading is the pattern of water along that double helical structure. Because I've mentioned this before on the faculty Q&A, but you know, one of the things is that, you know, that code of the DNA is wrapped up in that double helix. That code is inside the double helix. So for one thing, if you're going to get into to read that code, you've got to unwind the helix to get in there. But there's a lot of processes that need to occur before you unwind the DNA, before you open it up. And so actually, most proteins that interact with DNA don't directly, at least initially, interact with the DNA. They interact with water intermediary, because water around the DNA molecule has a very heterogeneous structure. It's not homogeneous. So actually, it's like you can read the differences in structure of the water molecules along the DNA backbone. And that's what these proteins do, is they'll read that and they can see what the code inside the helix is. And so you know, that speaks to the role that water's playing in the coherence, in the information processes that's occurring with the DNA. But then also they have observed these proteins, when they bind to the DNA as well, they'll send currents of electrons down the DNA helix. And they can actually see at distal locations, so locations downstream from where they're at, where there is damage, DNA damage, decoherence, let's say. And they can do that via reading the electrical current, the electrons that are being sent down the DNA double helix. And, you know, it's just an extremely sophisticated process, because all of this, the DNA water structure, the electron currents that are being sent through the DNA wire, all of this that is directly involved in the information processing and gene expression and DNA repair, is involving highly chiral structures, right? So the water that is forming this hydration shell around the DNA, it's called actually a chiral superstructure. So, you know, just super on top of, over structure, but it's chiral, so it's polarized. It has a handedness. The electrons that are being sent down the DNA wire, this current, all of them have the same spin orientation. So in terms of like electronics and like computers and stuff, that's called spintronics. So, you know, there's an entire possibility to do computations and memory storage using the spin of electrons, using what are called spin selective filters. Biology, the molecules in biology, they all do that.
You're talking about an entirely sophisticated biological analog computer.
Yeah, in many ways, yeah.
And do you see this both in animal and plant cells?
Yeah. So and you know, it goes back just a little bit to what I was speaking about, that this is actually just at the foundations of the intelligent properties, the intelligent capacities of the living system. So bacteria, plants, animals, you have this highly sophisticated, even, I mean, technologically advanced processes. I mean, we haven't achieved a really reliable, robust Spintronics computational apparatus yet, memory storage device. We haven't figured it out yet.
Has there been like a fundamental root frequency that people have been looking at and saying what's the driving frequency that initiates this?
Well, so the studies that have looked at the frequencies, they're seeing harmonics. So you've got vibrational frequencies occurring across a scale of ranges. So it's like you've got, perhaps at the most fundamental level, the vibrational frequency of that electron. Absolutely, the vibrational frequency of the water molecule, water interactions. And so actually, for the studies that were looking at the information exchange of those DNA repair enzymes, or even just DNA gene expression in proteins that bind with the DNA, they had to use what's called a femtosecond laser spectroscopy. So femtoseconds, which what is that? Is that trillionth of a second?
Trillions at least.
I think so. Yeah, because see, like a nanosecond is a billionth, picosecond is a trillionth, femtosecond is a quadrillionth of a second.
Quadrillionth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So and yeah, that's right. And so the water interaction is occurring at frequencies of about 10 to the 14th hertz. And so, I mean, that's at least what you're looking at kind of like a foundational level, 10 to the 14 hertz interaction, that kind of time scale. But like Stuart Hameroff, Anubhav Bandyopadhyay, these guys, they've looked at fractal scales of frequency interactions. So going to the microtubules, looking at it and identifying patterns of frequency of oscillation at 10 to the 14 hertz, and then seeing that there's actually like triplet fractal frequencies. And I just see that as, and there's probably, I mean, just the proverbial tip of the iceberg. So probably those frequencies, those fractal frequencies, are coupling down, I mean, to the proton scale, and then probably to the quantum vacuum structure, the Planck frequency, and then scaling up to like our, the macroscopic size type frequencies, which can be like at 1 hertz, 7 hertz brain oscillations, 0.5 hertz heartbeat frequencies, these kind of things.
That's a whole separate field of study. I mean, that's huge. Just looking, I mean, I want to yield and let everybody else have a chance to talk, but I mean, the way I see that is, if you understand those frequencies, you understand the scaling, now you've got the carrier wave for the information network. And then you're realizing that the carrier substrate really is the basis for that information network to occur. And if you get that carrier set up correctly, the ability for disinformation is basically eliminated once you get it right. And then the ability to reproduce it and said, what are the materials or the optical frequencies that we can use to get multiplied or subtracted on out? That seems like the golden calf.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I think you're identifying what from what I'm hearing you say, Ken, is that there's this underlying, what I would say, David Bohm referred to the implicate order. And so it could well be that as we hone in on this, we're really starting to identify the implicate order is really this musical system, as a way of describing it in a simple term. I think it goes way beyond our experience of a musical system in terms of its complexity and the harmonic layering, different ratios than maybe would be associated with a pleasant sounding musical experience in our experience, and yet all of it is based on the same fundamental principles which you're describing.
And I would add one thing: it's all based upon the precision of the frequencies, because we all know that if you take a frequency and you just deviate by 0.5%, you're going to get a different cascade. And so getting that thing starting on the right point and letting it naturally build on out is kind of like where it starts. And so, and the way I look at it is that that's the elephant in the room that really unifies the whole purpose of everything that we're here to study and learn. And and each one of us here are taking different pieces of that part. William, you're taking one part, Ness, you're taking one part, Marshall, Nassim, he's got, God knows what he's got everything. But it's all based upon that kind of understanding of what's that totality of the information system, and not just the information system that we can test, which I think is the beauty of what Robert Grant's doing. Is he's saying, I get that most scientists are based upon what you can test. Let's flip it around and say, let's understand the numerical theory, the numerical understanding, and see if we can get that way. And for me, it's a dovetail. You blend the two and you start finding the relevant points of intersection. And then you said, oh my God, I can start making quantum leaps ahead in my theory without necessarily having to build a quadrillion, dollar, thousandth of a femtosecond detector to get there. I can basically know what it is. So anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for putting that out.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for a good inquiry and great discussion all around for something that's truly fundamental to all that we're talking about here.
Hey, we might even have one next month too.
Yeah. We might.
All right, guys.
All right.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then the following question would be from I just lost it. Julie, no, we already went to that. Does entanglement occur? I can have another 2 questions, but well, we can address maybe this one. From Je suis, seems French. So does can you see him, Marshall? Je suis, and he's asking about, does entanglement occur at way faster than the traditional speed of light? Interesting. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
The answer is yes.
Okay, I'll start. So yes, it does. I mean, it's very interesting. That's one of the most fascinating aspects of the solution that Nassim's going to bring us with the paper that he and Olivia are writing. Just feel up here. That's like a game of the name. So this entanglement is okay. So you remember entanglement is this property that some like particles may have, like for instance 2 electrons that have interacted, and so they are entangled, and suddenly you have some kind of, you separate them by some physical mean, and suddenly you can have some measure on one of them and the other one would respond as well, following the entanglement relationships that they have. So let's say they're entangled in the way that one is spin up and the other one is spin down, and you separate the system, then you have a certain measure of that and you change the spin, and the other one changes the spin immediately at the same time as if it had received the information, but there's apparently no information transfer. So when you see this effect, it's happening much faster than the speed of light, just because of the physicality that we are able to perceive in this system. So then what happens so we had assumed from this observation that it was happening instantaneously. And because it was happening instantaneously, there was no, and nothing could travel faster than the speed of light. That's one of the things that also is like postulated by relativity. Then there's information couldn't be the reason. Information transfer couldn't be the mechanism through which this was happening, because if this was information transfer, it would be happening faster or at the speed of light or faster. I mean, much faster than the speed of light, because the entanglement could be very far. Hi, Jessie.
Hi. Yeah. No, hold on. Energy and matter can't move faster than the speed of light. If you study, I've got a weird background. I was involved in space back in the 60s. Okay, I had hardware in space, so
Okay.
I've done some interesting reading since then. But anyway, the idea that in fact information is not energy or matter, and of course Dean Radin, when he did his work, he showed that two people who were communicating telepathically continued to communicate when one or both were in electromagnetically shielded rooms, so there was no electromagnetic characteristic. In other words, our six senses actually are not energy matter. There's something different. It's an additional thing. And of course, one of the implications of the double slit experiment is that when you get an intelligent observer, or even a device designed by an intelligent observer, you actually can change what is a waveform response to a particle response. Okay, so my point is, and I'm in this weird guy. I didn't choose this. I got chosen. I'm a guided writer. I wake up and there are things I got to write about. I have another 5 mini books underway. So what if in fact this is essentially an information universe? My latest mini book is about that. And our minds are not created by our brains, but a gift from the universe, and are in fact information processors as a totally separate thing. In other words, the 6 senses are not energy matter. My hobby for 30 odd years was playing with characteristic times of processes. I even helped write a few standards through ASTM about that. But what if all of our 6 senses are not in the energy matter domain and not limited by it? And what if in fact information is the background and a manifestation of information on energy, that energy informs, or information informs energy to behave like we thought matter did. So we call it matter, but it isn't. It's just informed energy.
Yeah.
We now have two realities simultaneously. So when William's talking about some of these things, what if the reality that's part of one of my posts is that the information is already there. So you don't have to do things in series, because the information's already there. You can just simply use that information to pick all of the pieces and put them together where they should go.
You know, I think that's actually a key insight, and that's actually where you can start to see that, like the biological system, and in terms of like consciousness and cognitive capabilities, is non-computational. right? Because that idea of computation, well, non-computational fundamentally. I mean, there are identifiable computational elements to it, even analog computational elements, but those are derived. But at a fundamental level, non-computational in that all the information that exists is already there. It's just accessing it. So actually, what you're looking at more is just instantaneous accession of information. Even like in different space-time coordinates. Let's say.
Exactly. Well, and that, I followed Greg now for 4 decades. I've only picked up the sim recently. I've taken the other courses, but the reality is that what if, in fact, this is not, and this is the title of my mini book, it's only 40 odd pages long, is new matter in this information universe. And then I ask you to wonder what limits apply to you as an information processor that have nothing to do with matter and energy. If you want to go crazy, because I mean, I've been accused of being crazy, but I also did develop from first principles the equations for the joints on the Canadarm, first on the space shuttle, which then become part of the space station, and will be Canadian parts, again, another company, on the devices floating around the moon in the future. But one of my pushes is that the most important thing to do is to ask better questions. One of my je suis-isms is that, in fact, the probability of getting a useful answer to an issue goes way down if you insist on asking the wrong questions. So my skill in many, many different fields, I've worked in many, many fields as a physical system scientist, is getting people to ask better questions. And so the question is, what if the information pre-exists the matter, or what isn't even matter, it's just informed energy?
Your device battery is low. For your protection, please place your device on the charger now.
Oh, sorry about that. I have a fall alert because I had a massive heart attack 6 months ago, and even before I finished writing my last mini book that's published. But so, as a matter of fact, that's the reason I published it, because the doctor said I wasn't going to survive the night, and I told them to go to hell. Not only was I not going to survive the night, I was going to finish my new book. Yeah, well, I have an attitude. I've always had an attitude. But so I think one of the things that we can easily do is forget that we have a set of 6 senses. And of course, one of the things I study is other writers about 6 sense. And when I looked at Real Magic by Dean Radin, and he actually proved that a pair of people who actually were communicating by 6 senses put in 1 or 2 separate, beautifully, the work was beautifully done, isolated rooms, no electromagnetic readings possible between them, didn't change their ability to communicate at all. And I think that message should be something that should be done at Residence Science Foundation. Think of what are the implications of that if, in fact, we have this separate parallel process, which has got no limitations. One of my je suis-isms is another one, is that the universe appears to have few limitations. Limitations are developed by humans and societies, not the real universe. I have an attitude. My poor boss, I used to get them crying. But anyway, I love your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I was asking Ines if she thought, first of all, great to have an attitude, and it's well deserved, and great insights. And I'm curious to hear, Ines, if you would say the informational substrate is the sub-Planckian scale. Is that right?
That was what I was going to add. Because of the results from the holographic model, there's this substrate, which is the sub-Planck scale, in which this speed is 10 to the 40 times the speed of light. And that's what Nassim's called the refresh time of the universe, or the thought time of the universe. So it's not that the information was not traveling, it was traveling, but it's traveling through a network which is much faster. And so we perceive it as something instantaneous, but it's really moving faster. But I would also want to add that there's a work from Bobson, and he's almost about to prove that there's a direct relation between energy, mass, and information. So information probably would have mass. And the way he's going to prove it is because he's taking a USB, let's say a normal USB key, and you record some information, then you need to use a Kibble balance, which is the same thing you use like to measure a very tiny amount of mass. And then you have to erase that information and see what's the weight of it. And it's supposed to have an equivalent in weight. So and if we recall as well, the problem is what are we referring to with matter? I mean, it's the same thing like the discussion with the ether. It's saying like there's structure, there's information. So it's like a different kind of materiality. It doesn't mean that it's the same mass we have here, but if it's got structure and if it's got dynamics, then if it can like space-time, let's say, which has some like elastic properties, then that's talking about something which is material. It's got material attributes, even if it's not a matter that we understand and we can see. So there, and this work by Bobson, and maybe I can just share the reference afterwards. It's going to the direction that information, mass, and energy are equivalent. They're just transformations of a same thing. So I don't know how you would fit that into this. I do believe that there's information going inwards to infinity, and so that basically means that the information is already there, basically, because this information is in layers, and it's going fractalizing like deeper into infinity. And so of course we have this substrate which is already informed, but this information, and you could go downwards and downwards, and so that information, it's like even having the question, it's like the puppets, the Russian puppets, the Russian dolls, one inside the other one. So it's just the same.
Yeah, but my point is that our theory of the universe starts with a Big Bang. Why is it that as we look deeper and deeper into space and back further and further in time, we actually see that galaxies were forming many decimal places faster than any previous theory ever did? One of the easy ways is say that at the beginning of the universe, the information for the universe already existed. And in fact, we still have that, and all of energy and matter make use of that to organize. So you could easily, by the way, my first girlfriend's name was Ina, so although I pronounce it slightly differently, but if in fact the information pre-existed the Big Bang, this explains why, as we look further and further back in time and in space,
did you know that in the holographic model, this universe is created by a proton that escaped a former one? So the information is already there. In fact,
That's right. The information is already there.
It's already there. It's just organizing differently.
Maybe it wasn't a proton. Maybe it wasn't a bit of matter. Maybe it was just energy, and the information already existed. So if
but if you do the calculations using the equations, you have the solution to the observable universe. So I mean, everything is finally energy. What we call matter is just a relationship of dynamics, of information exchange. I mean, in fact, you're right, because it's what we call matter. It's just it's the inertia, the inertia of the inertia of the transformation exchange in the boundary that creates a boundary condition, which is a dynamic boundary condition of information exchange. So that's what we call matter. So
I've been thinking about these sorts of things for 50 odd. I'm 80, going to be 84 in 2 months if I don't disappear off this plane. By the way, as humans, we are eternal spiritual beings having a matter experience. Matter is quite useful for learning actually how not to do things. But anyway, like breaking up a dog fight the wrong way, so that in fact I'm no longer as rude with my right hand as I am with my left hand. Yeah. But yeah, well, I learned the hard way. But I learned. But yeah, it's I think you got to remember that we're mistaught on purpose, and that a vast majority of what we're taught is not precisely correct, and some of it's even downright lies.
It's a lot of that going on in our world these days.
Oh, isn't it? Well, I think it's always been so. Because
it has, because it's part of the nature of the dynamics of control and directing. But I think we'll leave it at that for now. Je suis La Plume. What a great name. And it's a pleasure to have you here and to share your Je suis-isms with us and your insights, because I think what you're really getting at is truly foundational to what we're all exploring in this model, and being able to articulate that in different ways is what enables us all to get this picture more holistically. So appreciate it.
What I learned was I had to learn to accept that even the people I worshipped had the right to be wrong.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's true. We all have to accept that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we're so happy that your doctor was wrong and that you are still able to share in this matter experience with us. And may we see you again in the coming months ahead. We would certainly love that.
Peace be with you.
As you as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So I'm going to have to go fairly soon myself, but how about you guys? Do you want to complete there?
I think we could wrap it up.
Yeah, that was a rich set of explorations. For an hour and a half, that covered a lot of territory, a lot of information, and great explorations. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, I guess we'll leave it there for today. And thank you again, Ines. Thank you again, William. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Obviously, there are many other good questions, some related to what we were talking about. So hopefully some of what we explored provided insights and even some answers to some of the questions that were in here. But as usual, we really appreciate everybody being here and posting very insightful and interesting questions and having great discussions. And that was a fun one. That was a really enjoyable set of explorations. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks for being here.
We will see you guys next month. And I assume with Nassim being back home, we'll have a live with Nassim early in June. Well, boy, but June already. So look out for that. And we'll be back in a month from now on the third Wednesday with the faculty. And hopefully, imagine that Adam will be here with us as well then. So, all right, everybody, take good care. Have a great month in the meantime. We'll see you then.
Bye. Bye.